but he won the popular vote by 1.5%, one of the smallest ever, and he won the general election by less than 50%. So what kind of mandate is this really?
Well, it is a mandate, and I'm going to explain why. And I don't mind the question, but let me be very clear. I'm no supporter of Trump. I'm a supporter of truth and the facts. And here's the facts. The man won every swing state. He increased in terms of his voter turnout in his favor from the standpoint of blacks, Latinos, and young voters. He increased his numbers in that regard from 2020. 89% of the counties shifted to the right. That's a mandate.
When Stephen A. Smith made an appearance on The View, he completely changed the course of events. He confidently and shrewdly took on Joy Behar, Whoopi Goldberg, Sunny Hostin, and the rest of the panel. Smith had different ideas from the hosts, who probably anticipated another relaxed, left-leaning conversation full of forced laughs and Trump criticism. He interrupted their story, leaving the audience in disbelief and them dumbfounded. The View even brought up his political aspirations, asking him whether he will run for president in 2028. He responded with confidence that he would defeat all other Democrats. He is obviously trying to establish himself as a disruptive force who is prepared to question the established quo, even within his own party. Let's now explore the incident that rendered The View incomprehensible.
So Trump's only been in office for 6 weeks. Seems like 6 years, doesn't it? And he's been going around with his cronies touting his so-called landslide and blowout win. But he won the popular vote by 1.5%, one of the smallest ever, and he won the general election by less than 50%. So what kind of mandate is this really?
Well, it is a mandate. I'm going to explain why. And I don't mind the question, but let me be very clear. I'm no supporter of Trump. I'm a supporter of truth and the facts. And here's the facts. The man won every swing state. He increased in terms of his voter turnout in his favor from the standpoint of blacks, Latinos, and young voters. He increased his numbers in that regard from 2020. 89% of the counties shifted to the right. That's a mandate. We can sit up there and play around all we want to. In 2020, Trump didn't win the popular vote. He didn't win the electoral college vote. A matter of fact, the Republicans had won the popular vote, if I remember correctly, since 2004. Yeah. But they did this year. So 20 years after they last won the popular vote, they won the popular vote. They won the electoral college vote. The man won every swing state. And on top of it, 89% of the counties shifted against. I don't understand how people can look at that and say, there's no mandate. There's a mandate.
Well, different definition of a mandate, I guess.
But the problem is that if you're the Democratic Party and you lost 49.8% to 48.3%, and you're looking at that 1.5% dip, that's an excuse for you to say, what we did really wasn't that bad.
Some people didn't
we should continue to do that.
No,
don't be do that. Find a new strategy.
But do you think those groups, the black voters, the Latino voters...
Joy Behar, in particular, is completely correct in what Stephen A. Smith is telling the cast of The View, but she simply cannot take it. Given that she is not accustomed to being challenged, her response was one of exasperation, incredulity, and outright rage. They probably anticipated another formulaic, left-leaning conversation when they summoned Smith, but he dispelled that misconception. Smith has outgrown ESPN and isn't scared to voice his opinions, unlike when he was influenced by Disney. In the meantime, Behar, Whoopi Goldberg, and the others don't care about the truth. They just want to keep their audience cozy in their echo chamber and won't acknowledge that they were mistaken about the previous election. The irony? Their entire strategy centers on modifying values in order to remain politically relevant, despite their resistance to doing so. Their objective is power, not integrity, in contrast to those who maintain their convictions regardless of election results. And if they want to win, Smith is telling them to reconsider their strategy, which is precisely what he is calling out. However, they delve deeper rather than listening. It's crazy to watch. We'll have to wait and see how Behar and the others react.
That you mentioned, are they going to regret it soon?
Possibly. I think so. I don't like what I'm seeing with Trump. I didn't like what I saw with Zelensky. I didn't like what I saw with a few things. But in the end, I didn't like it. But in the end, what it comes down to is this. The American people, in their eyes, it wasn't about him. They were voting against what the Democrats were throwing in their direction. I only talked to Cuomo. I did interview Eric Adams. I did interview Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries. I interviewed these people. I've talked to them. And I'm going to talk to some more of them, too. And I'm going to say the same message. What are you doing to win? I love Westmore, the governor of Maryland. I love John Kerry of Pennsylvania, okay? I just interviewed Cuomo. I like him a lot. I want somebody to step up and recognize That man in the Oval Office, whether you like it or not, is potent. He's coming and he wins. You got to find a way to beat him. This way is not the way that the Democrats have been doing it.
Let's talk about how people are feeling about his performance, because a CNN poll this week found that 52% of people disapprove of Trump's performance in office so far. So even though he may have won the general election by less than 50%, 52% disapprove of what he's doing.
Okay.
We're also seeing Republican voters at town halls opposing his executive overreach, giving Elon Musk the shadow presidency. Yet you said, quote, Trump is closer to normal than what we're seeing on the left.
Yeah, I was talking about why he won the election.
So?
When I made that statement, I was talking about that was about the election.
I see.
Right.
Okay.
So when during the election, I said in the immediate aftermath of the election, I pointed out he was voted for because they considered him closer to normal than what the Democrats were spewing. That was what I said at that particular moment in time. Obviously, Elon Musk is an entirely different matter altogether.
Right.
This man is not an elected official. He hasn't been confirmed by the Senate or anything, but he's got an inordinate amount of power.
Given to him by Trump.
I also can't really argue with it. Elon Musk has a lot of authority despite never having been elected, which is sort of crazy, but you have to give him credit because he played his cards really well. Regardless of whether this was his original plan or not, he purchased Twitter, now X, showed little interest in making a profit, and effectively ordered advertisers who oppose free speech to back off. By doing this, he put himself in a position to speak with Donald Trump, the most powerful person on the planet at the moment. Of course, this probably helps Musk's companies in some way, but there is no denying the wider picture. I understand that some people find it offensive that I've never been a big admirer of Elon, but that's just the way it is. However, what's truly amusing is how The View attempts to distort the facts. Stephen A. Smith makes a compelling case that the American people have ordered this, but they respond by saying, well, 52% of people aren't happy with Trump's performance. Now, let's use the same reasoning to consider Joe Biden. Are you familiar with his approval ratings? It's hilarious how they do mental acrobatics to support their story, as though Kamala Harris would have been a better option.
That could scare the living daylights out of folks, and the approval ratings, obviously we pay attention to that. But here's the bigger question. Who on the Democratic side are the American people pointing to and saying that's the person?
Well,
they don't have anybody yet.
We're 6 weeks in with
National Voice.
Right.
We're 6 weeks in with Everybody said let him do what he's doing so we can see what's going on. So, and now people are saying, well, what are you going to do as a Democrat? Well, wait a minute now. Y'all didn't want to hear what we had to say as Democrats. That wasn't what people voted for.
True.
So now we have a clear definition, and the American people will decide how they like what he's doing, because now it's affecting in a way that people were not anticipating. People who didn't think they would be affected.
I might concede that Donald Trump isn't flawless if I were an impartial observer, neither a Republican nor a Democrat, assessing the matter with objectivity. Ironically, considering that immigration was a key issue for his base, he is actually trailing Barack Obama in deportations, something that some of his supporters may not like to hear. I understand that some neutral voters may have other concerns. Perhaps they didn't like the way he spoke to Zelensky, but I see that as more of a diversion than a serious problem. Nevertheless, I personally wish he would deport more people. Nevertheless, the difference is clear when you compare Trump's approval ratings, whether they are 52% or 48%, to the left's priorities under Biden. The Biden administration has promoted policies like having trans generals in the military and having naked activists in the White House during Pride Month rather than concentrating on pressing problems. I would still anticipate that the majority of sensible people would choose Trump's presidency, which at least represented some semblance of normalcy, over the chaos that has characterized Biden and Kamala Harris's administration.
Who work in the federal government, they never saw this coming. They never saw this coming. Sorry about that.
That's right.
People can make omelets. Everybody doesn't eat eggs. Not a man, but I like chickens.